So like I said, I've been following you on social media forever. I feel like I've seen your evolution as like a human, like pivoting to like from different things, like being business coaching primarily to like wealth energetics and like wealth flow, and becoming a mother. And so I'm just so excited to chat with you about everything today. So I think starting off this conversation, I'd love to hear, where are you at right now? Like, what are you teaching women about and what are you most passionate about in your work today?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a juicy question because I feel like my work has been really evolving
Mhm.
in, I would say, the last year since I had my son. So I've got my 10-month-old baby, my 4-year-old daughter. But since
Okay.
having him last year, I could really feel myself going through like a whole other portal of expansion in my work. And what I'm really bringing through now is a lot more of the higher energetic work to then guide my clients' businesses. So
Mhm.
essentially looking at bringing them into their divinity, into their higher states of intelligence. And I have different practices that we do that in session. And then essentially like bringing through like what are the strategic steps in business? What's the messaging? What's the clientele coming through? And like bring it into that tangibility of business from that space. So that's a place that I'm playing right now. That's really exciting.
That's so fun. What was it like shifting that for you? Like, because like I said, I feel like I've gotten to witness you shift in your business over the years just because I've been along your journey for so long. I'd love to hear, how do you feel like you navigate those pivots with, it feels like so much grace and especially the clarity piece. Like, how do you know? Because sometimes I feel like in business, there's like this like light in your heart of like, wow, like I really want to start talking about this. But how can you marry that with also the demand of your clients and knowing that your clients are ready to go on that journey with you? Because as a brand who's been established for so long, like yourself, your customers and the people that are watching you and witnessing you and like love you, like how do you know that they're ready to go on the journey with you? Or do you just kind of like follow your heart and just know that the people who are meant to stay will stay? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, it's definitely, I've been through many pivots over, I think I've been in business for nearly 9 years or just, yeah, no, it'll be 10 years in January, actually.
Wow.
I've run different businesses, but with this particular business, I've definitely moved through different pivots because this is my soul work, right? So I feel like I am someone that always is just knowing where I'm going and expanding, even if it's not clear. I can feel the expansion coming, or I can feel like a new level of depth to the work. And I think like having moved through that at so many seasons now over the years, now I just embrace it and I trust that my clients will also be like receiving so much from me stepping into my evolution. Now, recently, with like this recent pivot and like navigating this new body of work, it did feel super uncomfortable. I even recorded one of my own podcast episodes, like speaking through that process
Yeah.
of surrendering into it. But
Mhm.
I'm always of the belief that, our clients, our soul clientele will feel that expansion and they'll desire that too. And we're actually bringing it through also for them, right? So I think that it's about getting comfortable. And I've had to really get comfortable with letting some people just like fall away and maybe be like, I'm not resonating with that. But
Mhm.
then I always see the ones that are like, tell me more about this. I need to
Yeah.
be, your next
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
And so I just show up for them and I show up ultimately for me and my soul and what I'm here to do because I know that that's going to reach the people that I'm here to impact. So
Yeah.
yeah, the pivot is
That's
always
beautiful.
difficult. It's not, I'm not going to lie. It's uncomfortable at times.
Totally.
Um, but really healing to move through it as well because it's such an initiation into a new level.
Yes, it is. And recalibration for your nervous system as well, which I'm sure is
Mhm.
like very related to kind of the wealth energetics that you speak about as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 I always think about anything that's uncomfortable for the nervous system is like it's your body, like your nervous system expanding, which yes, in that moment, maybe it's expanding to hold more discomfort, but in that
Mm.
same movement is also what's gonna like hold space for more abundance, more wealth, more joy, more love, and more of like the positive experiences in this life as well.
Absolutely. I always see that capacity expansion, as such a gift
Mhm.
because even though we move through those seasons where it's like, okay, it feels full or it feels like there's a lot happening, then
Mhm.
it starts to like simplify, refine, integrate. And
Mhm.
then you've got this like higher level of capacity or expanded capacity. And to me, I always think of it as I'm welcoming in more love, like
Yeah.
I'm welcoming in like more clients or going deeper with clients. It's a new experience of love in my field. And
Right.
so I see it as that when I'm in those like
Yeah.
stretch zones.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's so beautiful. Also, I'm sure like so helpful to bring into motherhood as well. Like you're holding so much right now in your experience. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And I know that there's so many clients of mine that will be listening to this podcast that are mothers and also are navigating owning a business as well, or wanting to build a business. So I'd love
Mm.
to hear, especially as I feel like you're such a grounded, like in touch with yourself woman. How do you navigate? Maybe it's routines, maybe it's whatever your day looks like, maybe it's spaciousness. I don't know what it is, but I'd love to hear more about how you navigate life as a business owner, a mother, and being in tune with your body. Because I feel like in this world, we can get so caught up in like performance and like go, 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 especially with like having a business and having kids. Like there's so much that you
Mm.
probably feel like you're like, oh, I should be doing, or like I could be doing like a million things right now. So I'd love to hear about like how do you navigate that so that you're still in touch with your body and your intuition and running a successful business and taking care of your children and your family.
Well, it is a full life. I always say
Yeah.
that. My doula and I were having that conversation after I had my daughter, my
Yeah.
firstborn. She was like, it's a full life, but like we wouldn't have it any other way because we're purpose-led women, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that analogy of like, it's not busy, it's full.
Yeah.
And I think I really had to like relearn my relationship with, yeah, even like not saying anymore, oh, I'm busy. Because
Yeah.
I was like, well, am I? Because when I look at like someone else working in a corporate job, they're way more
Right.
like busy on paper than I am.
Right.
Like I actually have a freedom-based business and I get to choose. And
Mhm.
um, I think that shift alone was huge for me. But just in relationship question around like intuition and body and like navigating the day to day, it is different every day. I think for me, I was actually never someone that had like a full morning routine. Like I've always been someone that's like, let me just flow with the energy in the now.
Yeah. Me too.
I'm like lots of Cancerian energy, so I'm
Yeah.
like water vibes all the time.
Mhm.
And so I have to adapt to like what's just coming up in the present moment.
Yeah.
So I never had like a long, meditation routine even before having kids. But now for me, I think I've just navigated how to state change and shift my energy
Mhm.
quite quickly. And that's taken some practice over years of like dropping into my divine state, into my intuition, like knowing what my body is saying to me, knowing how to read my own energy. So that alone, I think for me now, it's not so much about these big practices. It's like this intentionality. And I really try to live my life very intentionally from like moment to moment and not try to get kind of caught up in, well, look at everything on this day. But like, you and I are here now, let's be
Yeah.
fully intentional and present, and then I'll hop off this call and I'll probably get my kids up because they're asleep right now, and go into mother zone, and
Right.
but it's this intentional like movement into each thing. That was really healing for me on my energy system because I used to be someone that would live a lot in like what happened yesterday, what's happening tonight, what's happening tomorrow, and always be out of the now.
Mhm.
And I think that that is so healing as
Yeah.
women who we do have a lot going on,
Right.
or following all our dreams and desires. It's like coming back into
Mhm.
the present.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. And then I think with my kids, like, I mean, God, it's such a learning becoming a mother and like being
Yeah.
initiated with that. And now
Yeah.
with two of them and a toddler and a baby. So I'm in like that zone where it's loud in the house at times. And my nervous
Totally.
system does get stretched. And,
Yeah.
there's evenings where it's like, okay, this is there's a lot of sound going on and all of that. But I've adapted to just like letting myself almost go into it from an aspect of like, let me just play with them now. Like they're going loud and crazy. Okay, I'm just gonna like stop what I'm doing. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna shift my energy to
Yeah.
like meet their energy, or I'm gonna start to like calm my energy down and like help them calm down.
Mhm.
And so it's just really interesting to almost see it as like a day-to-day
Mhm.
experiment in a way.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the other piece just in that as well with my business has been so much about just refining and being intentional with everything that I do. And so I really, after having my daughter, she's 4 now, I really pulled back a lot of what was distracting me from like my big purpose and
Yeah.
what I really want to be doing.
Mhm.
And I really believe that because I love the work that I do, I get so much life force energy from it.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not scattered in all these places. And then from another perspective, I really streamlined my office suite and my messaging and the clients that I work with, So I think over the years, I've made consistent, like compounding shifts to
Mhm.
really bring in even more intention. And I think that that serves those days and moments where things are a bit, wild in the house or whatever's going on. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
how do you like how do you orient your schedule to be supportive of this lifestyle where you do get the spaciousness? Like because in my head I'm like, okay, in order for us to have like this like feminine flow that you're talking about, we have to have like the masculine structures in place. So what would you say like are some of the masculine structures you have and like how do you orient your life to allow you to feel less chaotic?
Yeah, I love that question. In terms of my schedule, in terms of like my client load, so
Mhm,
I'm only on Zoom calls, I would say like 2 hours, 3 hours a week.
mhm,
I'm very intentional with how many clients I work with at a time. And I also run a mastermind. So I know that, there's structure around that in the sense of I can coach, a group of women
mhm.
in, a 90-minute call. And then a lot of what I do is through teaching and Telegram as well. So I've actually woven in a
Okay.
lot of audio coaching. And
Mhm,
that for me as a structure feels really good because I actually can really dial in from, a psychic level, intuitive level in an audio format when I'm like reading a client's energy and what's going on for them. And I can fit that in amongst my day. So I'll have my baby with me and
yeah.
I'm like audio messaging in pockets of the day.
Right.
That works really well at this season.
Mhm,
Um, but I really have a simple business model. I have like three core offerings.
mhm,
I have a membership portal, I have a mastermind, I have private,
mhm.
and I'm very intentional with not adding more calls onto my schedule.
Right.
So, there's a certain price point that I charge for private
Yeah.
because of that as well. Like I really do reserve that for like a limited number of people because I go deep with my clients too.
Right.
Um, so in terms of like structure that way, that's how that's set up.
Mhm,
And I work about like 3 to 4 hours a day
mhm,
right now and about 4 days a week because of my baby being at the age that he is. And in terms of like running the business and like the operation side as well, I think I've just gotten super intentional with what actually moves the business forward. And
mhm,
I know that it's, building brand, sales,
mhm,
content creation, those pieces.
mhm.
Um, and I think just the messaging mastery and like the depth of my
Yes.
work at this stage helps that, right? So I
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm like, what do I post today? Or like, what do I say? I'm in that space at this season of my business where I've built what I have.
Mm.
So I think, building brand is really just compounding upon what I've already done.
Yes.
And I really see
Totally.
it that way too. I think I don't, I'm not someone that does a whole lot of like live launching or anything like that. Most of my offers are rolling and open through the year. And
Mhm,
that was another shift that I made moving into motherhood because for me personally, just the pressure of launching didn't feel, it just didn't feel right for my nervous system and my
right.
energy. And I wanted to have this more spacious offer suite and build brand into each of my offers.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's some of the shifts that I made from like a masculine structure way. I also have an amazing business manager. And, I speak about that too. It's not just me.
Yeah.
But I
Having a
do have a
team.
small team. It's just me and her.
Okay.
So it is a tiny team, but we
Yeah.
are very efficient. We are very efficient. And so I think that that's also important to know because I think when someone hears me say I'm only working 4 hours a day, I do have a business manager as well
Right.
supporting
Who's
me.
also working and supporting you.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
she manages client onboarding, offboarding, operations, admin, all of
Mhm.
those pieces that my brain just doesn't want to go
Yeah.
there.
I think that's amazing. Also, I feel like it's really expansive because I do feel, especially in the social media sales world, that there's a lot of pressure to do this like open close launch and
Mhm.
to like be able to shift out of that paradigm and be like, actually, this works too. And you can do whatever's more conducive to your energy style, depending upon like that's like your design, or maybe you're in a stage of like motherhood. But do you feel like that's what has been the challenges of like doing ever unrolling versus open and
Mhm.
close?
I think it's probably just that sense of like, let's begin energy
Yeah.
and like building that invitation in.
Yeah.
Definitely do have, promotional periods throughout the year. I do
Mhm.
a lot of like cash injection offers and mini
Mhm.
experiences. But really, I do not regret moving to like a rolling
Yeah.
offer suite. So it
Right.
actually is, it's for me now, it's about building the brand of each of the offers. I'm
Mhm.
actually in a season, like literally in the next 2 weeks, where things are slightly shifting, just the
Mhm.
offers themselves,
Mhm.
but the same structure. Um, but it's I think the main problem is, or the main challenge, I should say, is that like momentum building into it. But at the same time, I also know that I have women that are like, oh, I couldn't jump in January. I'm ready now. And
Mhm.
it's open. So
Mhm.
it's like I'm also working in my clients' timing. And I
Yeah.
really believe in that. And I really believe in like building a feminine based business where
Mhm.
we are allowing women to step in when they do feel ready, when they do feel prepared, because I know my work is going to be more powerful. They're going to enter in more powerfully when they're in that space. So that
Mhm.
was another decision of making, my masterminds and such open door.
Yeah, not applying so much pressure. I love that perspective of allowing women to step in when they feel more powerfully aligned instead of stepping in. Sometimes I feel like the open close concept can create the reason why it works so well sometimes for people is a
Yeah.
scarcity. Like they're like, oh,
Yeah.
scarcity, like, oh, it's going away. But then sometimes I feel like that can call people in either when they're in scarcity in their own life or when they're like perpetually in
Yes.
scarcity, like someone who's in a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been
Moving from
really
like
healing to witness that, to have
totally.
that change. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds really healing and just more nurturing and like slow and like you said, like more feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my vibe. I'm all about like sustainable business as well. So I really want my clients to come in and work with me in a way where we're looking at like the long-term legacy that they're building. It's not about these like quick cash wins. I do a lot of money and wealth work, but it's really in the energy of like, let's set up a new template and foundation for your lifetime to come rather than let's push you to 10K months or whatever the goal is. And of course we
Right.
do these pieces in terms of like hitting those income goals and all of that, but
Yeah.
I think that was just really another piece that I shifted as well of the way that I communicate to that and really focusing on sustainability.
Absolutely. So when it
Yeah.
comes to this like wealth energetics concept, I'd love for you to explain a little bit more about like what does that mean? What does wealth energetics mean and how do you teach it to your clients?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that people take all different angles to this. So for me, it's always from the lens of the soul and what our soul's natural birthright is coming into this world, and that we get to play in this universe and this earth and co-create and call in what we desire, but also circulate wealth back. So I'm a big believer in like this symbiotic energy of wealth and money being like a giving receiving
Mhm.
state. um for me, it's looking at wealth not just financially. Like that's almost like I always say it's like the least interesting part is looking at the money because it's like when you are really, I have my concept is woman of wealth, and that's what I really help my women come into is this identity that I am a woman of wealth, that I actually am wealth embodied. And so a lot of the work that I do is looking at the energetic frequency that they're carrying, their belief system, their identity. But then we also do a lot of like higher, spiritual alignment work and like spiritual connection work, always in the mission, and this is a big part of my work, is to bring women deeper into their divine power.
Okay.
I want clients to not feel like they need me at the end of the day. It's like they have got themselves and
Mhm.
then they get to play with me,
Yeah.
and it's a
Yeah.
desire-led thing.
Right.
Um, and then that naturally funnels into money. It naturally funnels into the financial aspect of
Mhm.
wealth when we're coming from that space of embodiment and identity of who we are and really tapping into that higher state of consciousness and energy. So wealth energetics to me is like spiritual and energetic first, and then the money piece comes from there. And of course, I do a lot of money conditioning,
Yeah.
healing work, and all of that with my clients, and that always comes into it. But yeah, that's my approach, and so everything I do now is through this divine lens of how can we, call in their higher self, their higher states of intelligence, and then direct into the action steps they take in business and
Yeah.
motherhood and life and
Right.
such.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I'd love to hear. So of like paint me a picture of like what does a woman who is not embodied in her wealth look like?
Yeah, I would say it's someone, and this is kind of the recurring patterns that I see, is usually an outsourcing of her power. It's wanting to like validate or prove herself. And so I see this in business a lot. It's almost like that underlying like good girl or people pleaser energy can come through a lot. A lot of the scarcity and lack conditioning, as you've probably seen in clients too,
Yeah.
that comes through from childhood. And this was my total journey, right? This is my literally describing me,
Mhm.
to the point where I began to heal and reprogram myself.
Mhm.
But I think that it's usually this, what I see energetically as well, because I pick up on things from an energetic and psychic level, is
Mhm.
like an energy going out of her body.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's trying to like, look for the solution. Like, what's the next strategy? What's the thing that I'm missing? I must not be worthy enough. I must
Mhm.
need to go deeper into this.
Yeah.
And the work is all about bringing them back into their power,
Mhm.
because from that space, then you're no longer outsourcing your decisions or your energy or your focus, and then we're really cultivating the wealth frequency within that is already alive within you.
Right.
So they're mostly, you know, the recurring patterns that I see with clients. It's that kind of outsourcing of energy and power.
Right. So a lot of that I feel like is from our childhood, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like
Yeah.
those patterns
As
are
always.
built like, yeah, in childhood. So how do you feel like you take clients through that? Like, do you have different practices you take them through, or is it like somatic work, or how do you shift a woman who's maybe outsourcing that to being more like insourced and like resourced?
Yeah. Yeah. My work works like very multidimensionally. So I do somatic work. I do a lot of like the chakra and subtle bodies.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of like the deeper, you know, in the session, as an example, I might be doing like deeper trauma work with my clients and really going into like inner child therapy, you know, past life, even stuff can come up in my sessions.
Mhm.
Um, and from that space, then I start to work with my clients as they're at a certain point, because obviously we want to like work in the body first and really go into the trauma, and so that we can, you know, deeply heal and actually clear at the root and all of those pieces. And then what I see is usually a shift starts to happen energetically, and I'll like intuitively pick up on it with a client. And then we start to go into like the higher realms of the subtle bodies. I work up in like the eighth chakra a lot, which is for me where they can access this higher state of soul or higher self.
Mhm.
And then there's a natural kind of repatterning that happens from that space. In my work, I used to do like EFT tapping and hypnosis and pieces like that too. I don't so much pull on those things anymore. And the reason for that is I'm really big right now on helping my women know that they don't have to go to tools like that. They're powerful. I love all of these pieces,
Yeah.
but you can always come back just to where you are
Mhm.
and you have access to that. And so that's a big part of my work right now, is that return to their power and
Mhm.
knowing that the tools are an option.
Yeah, absolutely. They're there.
Yeah.
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 That makes sense. And I feel like that's a big part of that teaching that you're talking about is like being a resource, is knowing that you don't have to have tools. They're there, but you
Yeah.
don't need them. And like we're enough on our own, and like you're enough on your own. And you don't need
Yeah.
to be outsourcing and getting us out of that loop of like, oh my gosh, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have to seek something outside of myself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I even went on that period myself where I even stopped. I was like, you know, I'd pull oracle cards from this place of like scarcity, right? So I was like noticing what's the intention behind wanting this message. It's like something's out. I kept thinking something's outside of me. I've got to get the answer somewhere else. So even just like as an example there, I was like, I'm going to stop using tarot, oracle, any of those like actual physical tools and
Right.
divination tools, and
Yeah.
really just like build my own practice with just my body or just my energy field and the subtle
Totally.
bodies. And that's what I really love. So
I think that
that's
the
where I'm
funny
playing
thing
right
about that,
now.
like the
Yeah.
outsourcing and like this new age, like outsourcing, like stuff of like, oh, I need like a crystal, or like I need like a card to like tell me and help me. I don't know. It's just so funny because it's just like the security blanket. Because a lot of the times with like the card
Mhm.
concept, yes, we're gonna like pull something that's gonna have like a freaking whale on it, and we're gonna make it mean something that we already know that's true about ourselves. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
so ironic about it, but it's so true. I completely understand that. I agree. I feel like I went through a huge shift of that within the last, I don't know, 5 years of my life as well, of being
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't need to be outsourcing this into
Mhm.
even as simple as asking other people's opinions all the time. I feel
Yes,
like
exactly.
we can fall prey to that so easily, especially as
Mhm.
women, because we're such community beings and we love connection. But
Mhm.
instead, when I feel that moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling triggered, or I'm feeling like whatever the thought is coming up, putting down my phone and being like, I'm not going to call anyone. I'm not going to outsource this. I'm actually just going to like sit here with this feeling and see like
Yes.
what this has to teach me. And I think that's kind of what you're saying of this inner knowing that we all really have, but a lot of us aren't integrating. Like we're not sitting with it. We're just like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. I want to like throw it away, and I want to replace it with a security blanket of something telling me what to do.
Absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
great way to explain it. And that was definitely my experience too. And that was my own personal choice, you know, and I always have my clients just really bring back to intention. Like, why are you pulling that? Why are you using that? If it feels amazing, if it feels nourishing, if it feels true, go for it. Like, you know, everyone has that
Mhm.
choice. But for
Mhm.
me, it was just looking at the intention of why I'm using these things. And it
Mhm.
was that outsourcing of power. So I'm like, okay,
Right.
let's pull back. Let's get uncomfortable with the feeling and actually hold
Yeah.
myself through this. Yeah.
Right. Which makes so much sense that that's kind of a wealth energetic. Cause like we said at the beginning of this call, like when we experience discomfort in our body and we can actually hold it without covering it
Yeah.
with like a security blanket or like
Yeah.
grabbing something to like make us feel better or calling someone to make us feel better. We could actually just hold a sensation in our body. That's also the space in which like abundance will come through. So I think that's so beautiful and like such important work that you get to be doing with clients.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love what I do.
Yeah. Holding them in the discomfort of like growth and
Yeah.
allowing
And I
the
think,
discomfort to be
yeah.
okay. We just live in
Yeah.
such a instant gratification culture as well that I've
Mhm.
experienced those aspects of my own business where things will be like, I'll have like a slow month or slow couple months. And instead of collapsing, allowing myself to just exist. And then like
Mhm.
the money comes in more than ever. And it's almost like this practice that I feel like God's taking us through to become more in this life is like, how willing are you to sit with the discomfort?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really powerful. And, you know, I work with my clients in a lot of long-term containers for that reason, to actually hold them through like,
Right.
you know, the kind of death and rebirth cycles that happen,
Hmm.
and like the ego deaths that happen in my world as well, because we really come
Yeah.
back into the soul level energy. And it's like not making anything wrong. Like I always say, if my clients having a lower money month, it's like, okay, let's not make it wrong. Let's not feel like we need to burn everything to the ground, or like that kind of drastic approach
Right.
that also gets thrown out a lot in messaging, I think.
Oh, yeah. It does.
Um,
It's like a
yeah,
marketing strategy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's another thing. I started to see through all these like marketing strategies when I was at like, you know, about 5 years ago too. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel true, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm just seconding what you're saying there. It's definitely powerful. And that's why I love to work with my clients in that deeper way, to just hold them through that and remind them that they're totally fine. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Everything's
this is
okay.
a part of, this is an invitation. I always say it's not actually, you're never being tested by the universe, because you are universe. You
Mhm.
are an element of source, right? And so
Yeah.
it's always just an invitation to go into a higher frequency, to look at something, to release something. Yeah.
Mhm, absolutely. So when you move women through this experience of just sitting with the emotions, is there any like tools that you recommend? Like, for example, I feel like a lot of my clients, I recommend spaciousness, which sounds hilarious, but I'm like, hey, I want you to create 15 minutes every day where you're like in the bath or you're alone on a walk and you leave your phone at home.
Yeah.
So what does it look like for you? Do you have any like tools and tricks that you could recommend to women that are listening to this podcast so that they could walk away having some things that they can integrate in order to become this like wealth embodied self?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would probably recommend that my clients go for a walk. I probably
Yeah.
say that at least once a week to
Yeah.
someone.
Same.
Like, you know, just get out of the house, you know,
Yeah.
because we're running businesses usually from home. So I'm usually like picking up, I'm like, do you live near a rose garden? Do you live near the woods? And I'm like, send
Yeah.
them to places because I can
Yeah.
tell like the location that they're in.
Mhm.
So that is definitely one, you know, this spaciousness. I think for me, spaciousness has been really healing in like, as you were sharing, like not just being like, I'm just going to be here right now. Like, I'm just going to allow this to be. I think that one practice that I really, you know, always bring them back to is just allowing the feeling to move through them,
Mhm.
and like inviting the feeling to move through them. I do what I call a higher heart practice as well. So it's like allowing them to come into the higher heart portal, which is, you know, within the heart chakra, but just like the higher intelligence of the heart.
Mhm.
And we'll basically like feel into an energy of unconditional love in that space. And then like send some of that into the space where you're feeling scarcity. Like kind of this like titration effect, right? Of like in and out a little bit, just to like weave the energy. So
Mhm.
if they're in the root chakra and they're feeling, you know, shame coming up, it's like coming into the higher heart, and we send some of that energy down into the shame and start to like alchemize it. So I do a lot of those sort of practices, but have them do that as well in private after session, or whenever they feel called. um I think another one is really just like allowing, again, this like intentionality in the day. Like that is the biggest thing that has been healing for me, is not rushing to the next thing,
Mhm.
and not feeling like, okay, I'm moving through a limiting belief, which I never call them a limitation. It's always an invitation. That's something
Yeah.
that I always say. But I'm moving through this invitation to like shift a belief, or shift a frequency, or let go of something, or love my inner child, or whatever's coming
Yeah.
through. And rather than being like, I've got all these things on my schedule, and like future tripping and thinking, worrying about money and all the things that I see my clients kind of spiraling into at times, I get them to come back into like this intentionality. And I think this is a really healing practice. Like I said at the start, it's, moving from each moment and even taking a moment to like clear the energy.
Yeah.
So I'll do this after every call, every interaction. I'll just take a moment to be like, I call back all of my energy.
Mhm.
I send back all energy that isn't mine.
Mhm.
I remember I'm sovereign. I remember I'm loved. I'm
Mhm.
protected. I'm divine, whatever comes through.
Mhm.
And then I'll move to the next thing. And then I kind of like do that throughout the day.
Mhm.
And I have my clients do this when they're in a space where they're feeling like overwhelm or they're feeling a
Yeah.
lot of scarcity coming up.
Yeah.
Because what happens then is we're like outsourcing our energy to like a
Yeah.
future experience, and then we're creating that because we're
Right.
like giving all our energy to what could happen
Mhm.
rather than being in the present. So it's really about coming back to the now moment.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, that's something that's been really healing. So that would be a recommendation for anyone listening, is that
Yeah.
intentional, like pockets of the day.
Yeah. Like coming back. I like what you said about calling back your energy. Because I
Yeah,
feel
I
like I
do a lot of
resonate with
energy
that
clearing. Yeah,
emotion of overwhelm. And
yeah,
sometimes, at least, I'm like so familiar with the word scarcity. And I feel like I have my own definition of what that means. But remembering the overwhelm is, in a way, the same thing as scarcity. It's because you've given away your energy to other things, which is making you overwhelmed.
yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. It's always
Yeah.
a recalling of energy. I get all my clients to do this work, with their clients as well. So like, not courting to clients, not enmeshing with people, like just having really like pristine, pure energetics in your business, in your client spaces.
Mm.
It's so healing. It's so nourishing. And I think that naturally brings you back into that wealth frequency.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think that that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. I feel like they're all like practical tips as well. And practical tips that challenge the listeners too, because they're
Yeah.
not like, I just want you to look at your bank account once a day, which is also like a good tip. But I feel like I love it when guests come on and they give tactical tips, but tactical tips that like are challenging
Yeah.
because
That's how I
it's
roll.
much harder when we're like, just sit
Yeah.
with your nervous system, just sit with it being uncomfortable, than being like, I want you to go buy this crystal.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I like to give people more of a broad thing so they can like
Yeah,
trust themselves, because all of my work is
exactly.
bring you back into self-trust, self-power,
Right.
and then apply it to your life. And
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. How do you feel like becoming a mother has shifted your relationship with your business or shifted your business itself? Because I mean, I feel like I haven't had children, but so many of my guest speakers have. And I feel like there's such a creation portal where like you've birthed your business and then you have your babies. And a lot of the times your relationship with your business shifts and like your creative energy has shifted. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear about like what your experience has been.
Yeah, so powerful. It's definitely been an initiation from that maiden energy or maiden archetype into mother, not just mother with my children, but mother energy, and
Yeah.
this like sovereignty.
Mhm.
I feel like when I had my daughter, I really like became a woman, like woman energy, where I'm like, I got my life and I'm calling back my power, and I'm not available for this anymore, or this person, or this project, or whatever it might be. So I really went through an initiation of stepping into like my truth
Mhm.
and my higher purpose. And almost, I think for me, it was like my children gave me that like boost. So I always say like children bring so much abundance and babies bring abundance. If we choose to have it that way, we're always choosing
Mhm.
and creating.
Right.
But for me, I really like when I was pregnant with my first, I was really in that space of like, my baby is going to bring abundance into my business and into our life.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, we're not pulling back here, we're actually expanding. And she is a
Right.
portal for that.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what happened. And then with my son, it's even another expansion now that I've
Wow.
been going through the last 10 months
Mhm.
having him. Um, I always say my daughter brought me like power and
Mhm.
my son's brought me peace,
Mhm.
because now I'm in this season where I'm like, nothing's messing with what I'm doing. Like
Yeah.
nothing's messing with like the peace of what I've cultivated in our life, in our home, in the business. And I just want more of that. And I want to deepen into that.
Mhm.
But back to like what I was initially saying, I think, and before having my children, I was running my business from a lot of maiden energy, a lot of like victim energy, a lot of outsourcing, a lot of like someone tell me what to do, and not really moving from my sovereignty and my power. And I think that has been the most incredible thing to witness, is
Yeah.
like that, almost like getting flung into the deep end of it as well, because you're like,
Mhm.
okay, now I've got a child And now I'm
Right. You
also
have a lot going
doing my
on.
own inner child work,
Right. Mm-hmm.
in a bigger way. But it has really called me into like my leadership in a deeper way,
Mm-hmm.
um, to really like restructure the energetics overall of my business and what I'm doing and who I'm serving,
Mm-hmm.
and stepping into my gifts more and
Yeah.
my voice more. So yeah, I mean, I think for anyone listening who's like wanting children or is maybe like moving into that right now, I have like a few pregnant clients right now. Actually, it's really interesting. That tends to happen in my spaces. People fall pregnant a lot in my spaces, which is exciting. Um, but I always say like to really look at it as an expansion, and it really is a new level of abundance if you
Mm-hmm.
choose it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, it's come back to that intentionality for me, because before I was like just doing all these things and I
Mm-hmm.
had all this time. And so I was kind of filling that with things that weren't necessarily in alignment. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm very intentional with what I do. And I think that
Yeah.
that naturally results in deeper connection with clients, speaking to the clients that I really want and going deeper in the work.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I'm going to be botching this, but someone was saying to me the other day this concept of like 90-10 or something like that, where it's like 10% of your day is actually what produces 90% of your income.
Yeah.
And it sounds like what you've done is with having your children, it's made you be so much more clear on your
Hmm.
day. Whereas like before in like the maiden energy of like, I need to be doing everything, yet only
Hmm.
10% is bringing in 90% of your income. Like
Yeah.
getting clear on, okay, what are the actual needle movers in my business? Because especially having like an online business, oh my gosh, like I have a podcast, I have a YouTube, I have Instagram.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many things. And it's like, okay, what actually brings in revenue? And for me, it's literally content,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
content and me talking on my story and me posting content, and that's it. And honestly, if I wanted to just do those two things, that's like I'm still probably bringing in the same amount in my business, and that's like 2 hours a day, like you said. And I think
Hmm.
that's really refreshing to be reminded of that, and being reminded to like not get lost in the noise, but also be where you're at. Like if you are in a stage of business where you aren't married, you don't have kids, it's just like you're just flying solo and you're like, let's go balls to the walls. Like, so fun, great, amazing. But you don't have to sacrifice your business success
Hmm.
to like launch your whole life too, and like have your life
Yeah.
be so full of like so many little blessings and like baby giggles and like a crazy home sometimes. And you can also still be successful and not have to sacrifice. And if anything, probably your business has grown because of the refinement and intention that you've brought into this space. Because sometimes when we are more clear with our energy, it expands more, I feel.
100%. Yeah. I really believe in that intentionality with the what we're building and
Mhm.
not getting distracted, because I think that
Yeah.
was the thing. Kids was just bright, shiny object.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm
Especially,
so guilty of that.
yeah, exactly. I think we all are at times, right? It's like
Yeah.
kind of human nature to be like, oh, and
Especially
I
working from
found,
home. Cause like you said, like
yes,
every single like female entrepreneur that I know for the most part, especially with like an Instagram business, you're at home like all day. And
yeah,
it's so distracting some days. I'm like, okay, I swear I worked today, but I didn't really get anything done, and it's that like bright, shiny object.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And that was my experience, like in a bigger way. And I still have to catch myself, like I'm not, I don't have this down pat. I'm just
Yeah.
like every day it's different, and I just adjust. But I think I was so just in that space where I'm like, let me buy like a million courses and do all these things and
Yes.
from this person. I love, we go through seasons where I think that's actually applicable to like
Yeah.
building a business and learning, right? And skills and things like that. I didn't know
Definitely.
business. I
Yeah.
was the first person in my family to run a business. So like,
Yeah.
here I go, I had no one to train me. I just quit
Yeah.
my job and like jumped in. But then I kind of went into that season where I'm like, okay, who, even from a perspective of like who I hire, like mentors, coaches, I was like, let me not buy the course. Let me just go straight to like the private experience with this person and just like funnel in and like be with them. You know what I mean? And so I just
Yeah.
started to make different decisions as well
Mhm.
with where I invest my time and energy.
Mhm.
So yeah, my business has
Absolutely.
only grown since having children and it continues to. And I think
Yeah.
that that is really healing. And, for a lot of my clients, they come into my world because they want to know how I've done that.
Mhm.
Because there is that narrative of like, choose one or the other. And
Mhm.
I believe you get to have all.
You get to do both, and you get to do both like fully, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's amazing. So behind the curtain, like tell us a little bit, like pull back the curtain on your life a little bit. I'd love to hear, like, do you have a lot of support with your kiddos? Like, what does it really, really look like behind
Yeah.
the scenes? Because I know there's going to be people listening, and I just want to close the door right now for them because I know there's going to be people listening that's like, well, she blah, blah, blah. You know how we do. We like create
Yeah.
excuses for people. So you said
Yeah.
you have like support with your business. You have one woman that you work with, your business
Mhm.
manager. So tell me about like your private life. Like, do you have like
Yeah.
support with your kiddos? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So with my daughter, for the first 2 years, she was home with us, and we'd have my mum come once a week.
Mhm.
So I did run my business for 2 years with my daughter pretty much with me
That's
all day.
amazing. That's
So I
very
think that that
expansive.
initially is, because people are like, oh, you probably had a nanny. No, I've
Yes,
never actually had
exactly.
a nanny.
That's why I could hear them. And I was like,
I haven't had a nanny, but I have had amazing grandparents. So we love the grandparents. And I'm very fortunate that we actually moved to be closer to our parents as well. So we bought a house about a year ago this week.
okay,
Um, and so we do live near our parents now. But to kind of go backtrack to when my daughter was born, 2 years with her home with us. And then we put her into 2 days of kindergarten, preschool, and then a day of childcare with grandparents.
mhm,
Um, Now at this stage, she's 4.5. She's getting ready to go to school. So now each day she's somewhere, but then she's
okay.
usually home in the afternoon.
Yeah,
So that's also the shift, right?
yeah,
So now I've got my baby boy with me home, but
right.
she's out most mornings doing things,
Yeah,
kindergarten, grandparents,
right.
and then she'll be home in the afternoon. So I
Okay.
do usually work just like a morning is my typical thing. And then
Yeah,
I'll occasionally do some work in the afternoon, depending on, usually in Telegram or more of those audio check-ins. That's how I like to fit them in the afternoon. My baby's 10 months old, so he's pretty much home with me all
yeah.
week. My husband does have one day off right now on a Wednesday. So he has him all day Wednesday. So that's like my main day where I'm doing a
The
lot of
work
content
day.
creation,
Yeah,
client calls, and things like that.
yeah.
Um, and then he now has started doing a Monday morning with one of the grandparents too.
Mhm.
So he's pretty much home with me for the rest of the time. And my husband's working too from home, but
Okay.
he's obviously got a boss. So I'm a little bit
Yeah,
more like free and
right,
flowing. I am
right.
my own boss.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's the structure right now.
that's
And
amazing.
we don't have a nanny or anything like that, although potentially we might, but we probably won't even go down that track with my son because of grandparents being nearby.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so
Sounds like
yeah,
you
even
did it
as
the first time. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you know what? I really went through that like season about he was like 3 or 4 months old, and we were talking about that, like what can this look like? My daughter goes to primary school next year. So next January she'll start.
Mhm.
And we were like, what does this look like for our son? And my husband was like, we could get a nanny, we could do this. And I was like, I don't want that. I actually don't want that. Like I want him with me. I've
Right.
done it before. I don't want
Yeah.
to miss out on these early years.
Yeah.
Like this is
Totally.
why my children are the love of my life. I want to have that time with them.
Yeah.
And my business will just work around it. Like
Yeah.
that, I always have this belief that my business supports me,
Yeah.
and that
Right.
I'm not to support the business to do
Yes.
things. Like I
Yeah.
structure it around me.
Mhm.
Um, and what is of service to us and our family. Because I know
Yeah.
that it also serves my clients,
Oh my gosh.
So,
Yeah. It serves
yeah.
everyone. And I think that's like more than possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the behind the scenes.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad
Yeah.
that you shared that with me. Thank you. I appreciate it. I know that that's
Of
going to be
course.
so supportive for so many women that are, like you said,
Yeah.
kind of in a place where they're like maybe wanting to have a family, but are scared to give up their business because
Sure.
we are purpose driven women. Women, every single woman that I work with is truly driven by purpose. No one's here like having a business to make money. It's just money's
Yeah.
energetically the reflection of us being devoted to our purpose. And
Yeah.
so that's why a lot of women that I work with that are like stepping into motherhood, there's some limiting
Yeah.
beliefs there of being scared, being like, okay, I have to sacrifice my
Mm,
identity or I have to give up some of what I'm doing. And I think it's just
mm.
so I'm really excited for women to listen to this conversation because it's truly so incredible that you are an embodiment of, hey, like we can have it all.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I said it before, but I really believe that children can be that bringer of even more abundance
Mhm.
and intentionality and purpose. Like it makes you actually go deeper into it because you don't have time to like waste doing something
Yeah,
else. You're like,
true.
well, I'm
Yeah.
going to do this and here I go. And for
Right.
me, that was the way. It was like really called me deeper into what I actually wanted and what
Mhm.
I desired. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it also just like as a listener. I feel like it probably has also brought you into a lot more trust in your body, which is like your body is the source of your intuition. So the more in devotion to your body, really, you can be in more trust you have with your body, the
Yeah.
closer you're going to be to like the truth of what's right for you.
100%. Yeah. And I think just even going through pregnancy and birth, and I had two unmedicated births. So, like, meeting my edge in that and like birthing my children, in the depths of my body's wisdom and, the ancient wisdom that I felt in those
Yeah.
two births, like that just really set a foundation of like, wow, I can do anything, like I can do anything. That was like so intense, so
Right.
powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that my intuition just took on a whole other field from that experience as
Yeah.
well, with both of them as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big
Amazing.
lover of like women, wanting children. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, let's do it. Like, you get to have your business too.
Yeah.
And it gets to look even better than it does now. So
Yes. Oh, I love
yeah.
it so much. Amazing. Well, I've loved this conversation so much tactical tips, so much expansion, so many good little nuggets for everyone listening. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to check in. Is there anything else you want to share with the community before we wrap up?
I always just end any interview that I do, if I get the opportunity to say, just to remember your power. To, if anyone listening and you feel like you're in a season where there is some scarcity or lack coming up, it's like, just remember that you do have everything within you, and building in some sort of practice for yourself to return to that, to feel that, as we were saying, like to feel into it and through the more like deeper emotions, to really return back to that truth of who you are. I think it's just going to hold everyone,
Yes.
for a lifetime to come.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Those low points are inevitable. It's the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, amazing. Well, tell me where we can find you, where all my listeners can find you on Instagram, what you're offering. Just give us
Mhm.
a little Jenna Black pitch.
Yeah. So my website, jennablack.co, so they can go there, although everyone's on Instagram. So my Instagram handle, excuse me, is jennablack.co as well. And the best thing to honestly to do is to like message me, and then I can tell you, and we can have a chat about where they're at in terms of their business, income level, what they want to create. And then they can, we can have a chat about which offer is best. But I do run a membership, I run a mastermind and private containers, and I have a few different tiers in private as well, including intensives and longer term. And then I've got my Queendom Mastermind, which is my main mastermind space as well. So just reach out and we can have a little chat about where you're at.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jenna. I am so grateful to have you here, and I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate
Yes.
it.